Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a crazy Karen blocks a disabled parking spot and insults a veteran. She gets banned from the entire restaurant chain. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. So the story starts like this. I was taken to a restaurant for lunch by a dear friend. We got lucky and there was an empty handicapped parking spot right in front of it. However, there was someone parked in the ramp area. A little about myself first though. I am a 60-year-old disabled veteran and, unusually for a female veteran, I wear a cap that says so and I use a walker, so I need the ramp. And by the way, Ripe stars, I'm curious why it is unusual for female veterans to wear such a cap. If anyone knows more, please let me know in the comments. But either way, my friend went in to see if the restaurant would find out who parked there and to see if they would move it. Meanwhile, I walked around to a different ramp quite a distance away, which put me in severe pain. After we got inside, the Karen showed up at the register. Let's call her what she is, an entitled Karen, hereafter called EB. With her was an elderly gentleman who never said a word. He was also wearing a military cap. No walker, but he looked like he could use one. She started talking about how she needed a handicapped spot because of him. Then I told EB, that's not a parking spot, it's for people to get up on the sidewalk with walkers, wheelchairs and motorized carts, and that blocking it is an $800 fine. She started to say something to me back and then she saw my cap and walker. She left raising hell and we found out that she parked there because one of the three managers was a friend of hers. So then we called the corporate office and she was banned from all three and the manager she was friends with almost got fired. I don't imagine that manager was friends with her much longer, with her almost getting him fired. And yeah, Ripe stars, a Karen like this is definitely a friend that you need in your life. Very good if you want to get fired from your job. The next stories, just to inform you why they will sound a little bit different, were recorded a while ago. However, they should still be fresh and new to you. These are not reposts or anything. Neighbor knocked me off my motorcycle with a leaf blower and tried to kill me. A couple of months ago I purchased a new motorcycle. It was not anything fancy, but it was something that I always wanted. My 12-year-old son was also overly excited about the motorcycle and going on rides with me. It was a smaller, not as loud as you usually see motorcycle, but nonetheless I had always dreamed of having one and now I finally had one. However, it caused major issues between me and my neighbor. I already had issues with my neighbor. The guy was a douchebag and had issues with several other tenants in the neighborhood as well, so I knew it was not just me. A couple of months ago, the police were called to his house after him and another neighbor got into a physical dispute over a parking spot in front of his house. He had never said anything rude to me directly, but I did my best to avoid him because I knew what kind of person he was. A few days after I bought the motorcycle, my son was really excited to see it in action. He wanted to ride on it with me, but I would not let him until we found a helmet for him. I had already found a helmet and gloves for myself, so I decided that I would drive up and down the street a couple of times so my son could watch. My neighbor was on his lawn, seeming to be doing yard work as his leaf blower and lawnmower was out. So I figured the noise from the motorcycle would not be too disruptive in the neighborhood. However, my neighbor was not having it and we ended up getting into a physical altercation. You see, I was driving up and down the street while my son watched from our front yard. I had noticed that several times the neighbor had turned his head to look at him and looked displeased at me riding my motorcycle. But like I said, there was also the sound of his leaf blower, so I did not think it was important. Well, when I had turned around the third time and drove past his house while my son watched, he turned off his leaf blower and threw it at me while I was on my bike. I was knocked off my motorcycle, which was a very traumatizing thing for my son to witness. Immediately pain, and I knew that I had a broken bone or two. I can remember yelling at my neighbor, asking him what the F was wrong with him. However, it gets a lot worse. When I was trying to get up from the road, the neighbor came over and tried to attack me. He even threatened that he was going to kill me. The threat that left his mouth terrified me. But more importantly, I was concerned about my son's safety. While I was trying to fight off my attacker though, my son came over and tried to push the neighbor off of me. I yelled at my son to go inside and get his mom, but of course my son inherited my stubbornness. The neighbor picked my son up off of me and threw him into a large rock that sat in another neighbor's lawn. I was livid, fuming, and by now several other neighbors had come out, and so had my wife, to see what was going on. But by the time people were calling the police officers, my cowardly neighbor had run back inside his house. After police officers had arrived at the scene, I did my best to explain to them what had happened. Several other neighbors gave statements as well that backed up what I said. When I was transported to the hospital, I found out that I had a broken rib and a broken finger. Luckily, my son had no serious injuries and only ended up with a few scratches. Of course, with the police already involved, it was not hard to get a legal case going. Somewhere along the investigation, I had actually learned that my neighbor has a history of being violent, which was concerning considering he lived right next to me. My neighbor also denied throwing the leaf blower at me, but that lie obviously did not get him anywhere. Considering that then the police officers showed up, both the motorcycle and leaf blower were in the middle of the street. In the end, my neighbor was actually sentenced to prison, which made not only my family and I feel a lot safer, but the rest of the neighborhood as well. He was indicted on several charges including aggravated assault, terroristic threats, and simple battery. Although I was pretty beat up from being thrown off my motorcycle, justice was served. Karma is a witch, huh? And yeah, ripe stars, justice was definitely served, and I for sure would not want to live next to a neighbor like that. However, you do have to wonder why a person like that can become so violent. Something must be seriously wrong in his life. Have you ever lived next to any really aggressive, maybe even violent neighbors? Please let us know in the comments. The next story is titled Layers of Bad Idea. So this happened sometime in the 2010s somewhere in the UK. That is all I'm revealing. I worked for a medium-sized PLC in a small team that worked with the sales department getting quotes. I had previously worked in another team in a different department in the same company as well. This also includes elements of malicious compliance, so I will post this there as well. So, to set the scene, the company had recently had some issues with regulators and senior management were either oblivious to the damage they were doing or they did not care. They were trying to save costs but going about it all the wrong way. My team consists of 6 team members and a manager, and we were fairly busy and often helped out on other teams as well, and they would in turn help us. This is important for later. So, we are all called into a meeting without warning and told that due to the declining work tickets that they were laying 2 of us off. They did say 2 people were safe, the manager and his sidekick. They made us reapply for our jobs, including doing a test, following the letter of the law on redundancy, which had nothing to do with our roles. It also became apparent during the process that the company flat out lied or at the very minimum manipulated the data used to come up with their conclusion of falling ticket numbers. They dropped by 13 from year 1 to year 3, bear in mind it was a total of several thousand tickets a year. In the end, the company carried on and 2 team members were removed and made redundant, one of whom took a golden handshake and the other sued the company for various things, not really worthy of mention here, and won. After the dust settled, it also became apparent that manager secured his sidekick's position despite him being the worst member of the team in terms of work done and work quality. So, in the weeks after, the entire team were too busy to help other teams who then stopped helping us, so a huge backlog of tickets also built up. We also got threatened with disciplinary proceedings if our backlog did not come down, but also we were refused any overtime. During the process, we had also been admonished for skipping steps in getting quotes, steps that often took a significant amount of time and served no purpose. So me and 2 others remaining, not including Sidekick who had his nose so far up manager's rear and it came out of his mouth, decided to do everything by the book down to every last bullet point. This made the backlog of work even worse, but they could not say anything. One week we had another meeting with HR, the sales director and our manager to discuss the issues. We all calmly said, "We are sorry, but we have to follow the guidelines and rules laid down, and this is as fast as we can work." We were also asked to start helping out the other teams again, as we should be team players. Again we said, "We are sorry, but we cannot. Our workload is too high, and it's also not in our contracts that we have to do other teams' work." This went on for several months, and management still refused to believe that we were overworked. When it was time for holidays, we realized they had not changed the amount of people allowed off from 3. So we all booked holidays, they both went abroad, and I decided to visit family on the other end of the UK, and of course when manager realized, a week before, he went nuts and another meeting with HR was called. We all calmly said, "Sorry, but we checked the rules for our team, and 3 people, out of 4, manager could do what he likes, can be off at any one time." And again stood our ground, and all went on leave for 2 weeks each. This caused even more chaos at work, as you can imagine. The sales director after this hatched a plan to get the Indian teams, we had offices in India and other offshore places, to be trained up by us and to help us. However, they demanded we fly out to spend weeks there training them. Again, we all refused, as it is not in our contracts to be trainers or to have to work abroad. They ignored the fact that I didn't have a passport at this point, so poor old manager and his sidekick traveled out and trained them for weeks. Eventually, both stayed for over 2 months and failed to train them. We would send low-effort tickets to them and they would screw it up, and we simply said, "Sorry, to fix this we need to do it again." So, after 6 months they gave that idea up entirely. We, after around a year or so of this, I'm being deliberately vague on timing, so please don't ask about it, we all decided to all seek other employment, having found we all couldn't trust the company or manager anymore. And we all found roles elsewhere within a week of each other, so all handed in our 4-week notices, again to the letter of our employment contracts, and were due to all leave on the same day. Now, the female member of the team, who was a very learned person, she revealed in all our contracts any documentation we create is ours and we can do with it however we wish when we leave. So we hatched a plan. In the final week we are there, we move all our digital stuff to one location, including all my manuals and cheat sheets for my previous team. They both did the same with their previous positions within the company. On our final day, we bring in our own external drives and with IT's help download and removed all documentation and deleted the copies on the company's systems. We all said our goodbyes and at the end of the day quite happily told our manager what we had done. He exploded and demanded it back, and we calmly tell him not according to the letter of our contracts. This, waving the drives at him, is ours and we choose to remove it with us. We were later told by friends who remained that the sales director had a fit because now no one was doing quotes for him. Gladly, we all have had great new places and keep in touch. And Ripe Stars, if you enjoy the awesome revenge stories, then I would really appreciate it if you could also like the video, because recently we pretty much always reach 1000+ likes and that is absolutely amazing. I am very grateful for your daily amazing support. Thank you so much. And the next one is titled, "Fire My Boss, You Will Regret It." This took place more than a decade ago. I started working for a small branch of a company and got along really well with my boss, the branch manager, and used to compare him to Michael Scott. Not to his face, I would have been Jim Halpert in this scenario. Very nice reference, by the way. After working there for a while, my boss was approached with an awesome offer to go manage a bigger branch a few hours away. This was because the owner wanted to place his son as the branch manager of a small location and needed to vacate a position to do so. My boss graciously turned down the offer. His kids had just started at their new schools and he didn't want to uproot them again. He had relocated to take the current position. This was not taken well by our corporate office, but they could not fire him for it, not directly. A few weeks later I saw our office manager, a lady nobody in the office liked, in my boss's office filing paperwork, or so it seemed, which was odd but not alarming. The next week my boss was going to be on vacation and all the office staff had to attend a meeting for non-salaried employees at the corporate headquarters. While we were at the corporate thing, our office manager handed out new office keys to all of us, 3 that were there. my boss was on vacation and salaried, I asked, "Why are we getting new keys?" And she said it was because someone lost theirs. None of us had lost our keys, we were all sitting together and could easily confirm this, so I texted my boss to ask him and he had no clue what she was up to. I got a bad feeling about what was happening. I called him after the meeting and told him to come by my house Sunday when he got back from out of town. I explained that I was 95% certain that they were planning to fire him on Monday. I did not know what reason, I just had a gut feeling. I said it was too bad because if he was fired, I would not want to work there anymore, knowing that they would do shady stuff like that. He jokingly said that he should fire me first so I could go on unemployment. I laughed and told him that he should write me a termination notice, and then if he does not get fired on Monday, it would be just between us. But if he does get fired, I could take it to the unemployment office and have proof that I was fired for something that would make me eligible for benefits. So we did, and he was fired on Monday for misfiling paperwork of some sort, and I definitely did not go back to work. They tried calling me in and I told them that my boss had fired me already. I took the proof with me to the unemployment office and was good to go until they, former employer, disputed my claim. I had a hearing on the phone with the unemployment office and my corporate HR person. HR: "He was not fired. The paperwork he submitted with his claim is not the right paperwork. It should have come from HR, not his manager." Unemployment: "Why did the manager not do that then? Where is he?" HR: "He no longer works for the company." Unemployment: "Why did he leave?" HR: "He was fired." Unemployment: "Why was he fired?" Getting exasperated. HR mumbles, for doing paperwork incorrectly. Unemployment: "Well, that is hardly the fault of the terminated employee. How is he to know that the paperwork is invalid that is coming from their supervisor?" They told my HR that they could rehire me or not, but my claim was valid. They could not rehire me because they had already filled the position, so I got to collect unemployment for a while before moving on to my next job. My former boss is doing well now, it seems, and I don't feel bad at all. For the record, it is very likely that they would have invented a way of firing me after they got rid of my boss. Had they done that, they would have made certain that my termination was such that I wouldn't be eligible for unemployment. I took that power away from them by getting fired preemptively. I am also positive that when I saw the office manager in his office while he was away, she was arranging the setup for him to be fired. And I gotta say, Ripe Stars, props to the boss and OP, that is a very clever way of getting fired on purpose. Nonetheless guys, I'm curious, have you ever gotten fired from a job? And if so, and if you're willing to share, why did you get fired? Let us know in the comments. The next one is titled, "Don't Let Me Go Home in Time, Bad Idea." My supervisor was one of those little pricks who did absolutely nothing and loved being in power and was always on a power trip. He delighted in being the supervisor even though he didn't know how to do his job and he was horrible at it. He loved holding people over their shifts just to see them squirm and run late to whatever things they had planned after work. He loved to belittle me and call me useless and stupid. In the state where I work at, any shift worked over 5 hours entitles you to a 30-minute unpaid lunch break, and if you don't clock out or take a lunch break before then you automatically get a full hour's worth of pay. I was also entitled to double time if this happened for consecutive days in a row. I was routinely scheduled for shifts that were 4 hours and 45 minutes, which just cut me short of the 5-hour mark. Before my shift would end, I would make a show of looking at my watch and talk excitedly about my plans after my shift. Supervisor would then purposely hold me over, which would turn my shift into 5 hours and enabling me to get those extra $15 an hour. Or I would purposely be slow at a task in which he would laugh at me and say, "It is so cute and pathetic at how slow and bad you are." I ended up getting so much overtime pay because of him, and eventually he got in trouble for consecutively holding me over and the company having to pay me so much for overtime. And the last one is titled, "Walmart Revenge." I work at a Walmart, specifically the online grocery pickup OGP section. For anyone that doesn't get the basics of it, basically you place a prepaid order online, we shop it for you and then bring it out and load it into your car. Pretty simple. We are decently busy pretty much all day, and as expected we have reserved parking spots, specifically 12, for the customers to come pull in so we can easily load their groceries. On one fateful day, we were rather busy and the weather was quite bad, raining. This random lady pulls into spot number 12, so naturally I go outside to talk to her to get her name and order number and whatnot. Hi, how are you doing today? Good. Do you have an online order for pickup? No. She steps out of her car and begins to walk inside. Well, if you don't have an online order, you cannot park here. This is reserved parking for our customers. Okay. And she casually ignores me and proceeds inside. Our manager printed notice papers to put on windshields for asshats like her. They are nothing special, just made out of paper. I took around 12 and lined her entire windshield with them. You could not see a speck of glass under the paper. Now, since it was raining, the papers almost instantly stuck to her windshield like glue and completely soaked on to the point where wind was not blowing them off. I never caught her reaction or heard if she complained, but watching her scrape wet paper off her windshield in the pouring rain through our dispensary door was the most satisfying thing I have ever done during my time there. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.